You weird.
Is Split more competitive after the changes? To answer this, I spent the past 3 weeks analyzing over 100 games of Split in the top 1% of ranked to find the answer. How has time changed the meta of Split? With the changes of the map and Harbor being added into the game, in addition to new strategies like the Grim Wall and the Gritty Swing since the map last seen competitive games played, it'll be interesting to see how new strategies and the overall meta will develop. Before we can talk about the recent pick rates and win rates, we first have to look at the old meta.
That's 3.
Before we can talk about the recent pick rates and win rates, we need to first look at the old meta Split to be able to compare the data sets to see how the new strategies have affected the pick and win rates. All info is coming from metasrc.com since I do not have any data from before the map was removed. Starting off with controllers, we have Omen, Ashley, Viper, and Brimstone. The highest percentage for win rate and lowest percentage of win rate will be Brimstone with number 1 for highest percentage of win rate, and with the lowest we'll have Astra with a 50.82 win rate. Pick rate, we have Viper with a 0.65% pick rate, and then we have for the top percent would be Owen with a 10.93 pick rate. Now moving on to duelists with Raze, Jet, Reyna, Yoru, Neon, and Phoenix. We have Neon with a 53.49% win rate, making her the highest percentage for win rate. Now for the lowest percentage, we have Phoenix with a 58.14 win rate. Now for pick rates, we have the highest of Jet with a 11.93 pick rate, whilst the lowest would be Phoenix with a 0.53% pick rate. For Sentinels, we have Chamber, Sage, KJ, and Cypher, with KJ having the highest percentage of win rate as a 50.91, and the lowest would be Cypher with a 46.37% win rate. Both pick rates, we have Chamber with the highest percentage of pick rate with a 14.87% pick rate, and with the lowest we have KJ with a 1.92% pick rate. For initiators, we have Fade, Sky, KO, and Sova, with Fade holding the highest win percentage of 51.53 and KO holding the lowest of 57.16 win rate. But for pick rates, we change a bit here. We have Fade once again with the highest pick rate of 5.18 and the lowest going to Sova of a 0.58% pick rate. Now, the best possible team for the old meta that would put you at the best possible advantage of winning the game would be Chamber / Sage and Fade, Omen, Raze, and Reyna. So to solve that issue, I was forced to spend 3 weeks analyzing over 100 games of Split for top 1% of games, and to make sure I did not dilute my results, I made sure not to use any games with cheaters, throwers, smurfs, and or boosters. Now, I was only using a 50 game set, since that would be enough to get an overall sense of the rates, with little to no differences if that were to be expanded upon. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the maths involved in calculating the pick rates and win rates, but if you'd like to know more about how I calculate percentage or would just like access to the data, the description. There are many changes over the time that we have seen, with a lot of the duelists dropping significantly like Phoenix and Neon, but what has seemed to have happened is that many players start to stick with Raze because she got an increase of about 65% in pick rate, and this is most likely due to her vast utilities being great for clearing tight corners, which is great, especially with a map like Split. Whilst our counterpart for second best would be Jet, has also had a massive pick rate increase of about 29%, probably for those extra smokes and increased verticality, which has been great on Split since there's a lot of places to hide. Controllers have seen almost the same pattern, but Astra and Omen both have seen a massive pick rate increase, with Astra having around a 53% increase and Omen only increasing about 92%. Now, the massive increase in Astra most definitely has to do with the new understanding of how to play Astra, since Astra has a steep learning curve. This also may have to do with the increase in utility for clearing out corners. Out of all the categories, the Sentinels seem the biggest changes, like Chamber going from 15 plus pick rate to about a 3% pick rate, making it a total drop off of 12%. But this is a bit off, and there is about a 40 or 50 range, making the drop off even bigger to about 43%, and this massive drop was all thanks to one nerf, which in my opinion is quite crazy. Now with the absence of chambers, Sage started becoming the number 1 sentinel with a gain of 48% pick rate, mostly because there were a lot of interesting use of walls on split like on B site or mid wall. Something really interesting is happening here for a number of reasons. So there hasn't been any change. Now the initiators holding the number 1 and 2 spot would be Fade and Sky for before and after removal. But now I think that this is mostly due to the lack of initiators and also the abundance of utility that Sky and Fade can use to clear corners, whilst agents like Sova aren't used due to the fact that there's a lot of debris and roofing on this map, making Sova hard to use. Now, what is the best possible team for the new meta? Now, I think the best possible team would be Jett, Raze, Sage, Sky, Astra. I think that all these agents have in common would be mass utility for clearing corners that I really seem to think is the main theme of this map. It mostly has to do with the vast amount of ready spots for defense to hide, but this new heavy utility meta leads to some problems that we'll get into with our next chapter. Is split attacker heavy? The old split was an incredibly defensive sided map with a whopping 53% defense success rate, which is a lot considering most of the maps are around 50-50. Now this is one of many reasons why split was removed, but how have the changes changed the stats? Are they closer to 50-50 or are they farther apart? Please note that this is based on what side you spawn in first. Now I know that this was a 25 game dataset, mainly because I had to rush this video out and since I'm taking too much time doing all this. Now this may increase the stats artificially, but we can bring it down with a more reasonable point. So this map has changed quite a bit with a completely opposite flop of 59%, or more reasonably 53% chance that you're going to win the game if you first spot an attacker, compared to the 41 or 47% win rate if you start as a defender first. Now, I have no idea what's going on here, but if I had to guess, I would have to say that since you start as an attacker, you would win a couple of rounds to hold yourself off the defense, where you will get most of the majority of your round wins, and will win since you have the advantage of defense for the second half. Now to confirm this, I added up each round 1 on each game for the winning team, with the attackers only winning about 152 rounds, whilst the defense only winning about 163 rounds. Yeah, this map is still incredibly defensive heavy, with a whopping 163 rounds won on defense, whilst attack only had 152 rounds won. So does it confirm that having defense second half and attack first half gives you an advantage of any sort?